guys, my name is Anna, you're watching SimCue, and without further ado, let's get into this video. So today we're building Rapunzel's tower, more specifically the one from the Disney film Tangled, and I was super excited about building this, and then I very quickly realized that it was going to be such a hassle. So this is actually requested by one of you guys, and I love to see your guys' requests, and I love to build what you want to see. So nothing against that. I absolutely love your requests. Keep them coming. But I will be probably complaining throughout this entire video. Because what I very quickly realized was that this tower is round. Which meant that I had to work with curved walls, or as I like to call them, cursed walls. Because they create so many issues that you can't really take into consideration when you're starting this kind of build, I feel like. So there's a lot of me doing trial and error to finally make something work. Now, what we've already got going on is that we have 2 floors that are going to be the actual tower part, and then we have what would technically be considered the ground floor, which is more so just a part of the tower itself. This is where I placed all of the enlarged corbels around, because that is what we also see in the film. And now, aside from the hassle of working with curved walls, another big issue specifically with this one was the proportions. Now, I would say that I'm quite experienced with translating proportions from one format to another, like real life to The Sims 4, or in this case, a film to The Sims 4. But this one was way more difficult than I had anticipated. So prior to the footage you are seeing, I actually spent about 1.5 hours trying to figure out the proportions of this tower. Because the issue I kept running into was that from the outside, it much more looks like just one floor. Currently, we're working a little bit on Rapunzel's window, and when we see that in the film, that is actually aligned with the roof of this tower. But when we then jump to the inside, we have an issue because we can very clearly see that there is a staircase. So from the inside, this indicates that there are 2 floors, and I very much wanted that part as well. So I was a little bit conflicted. I actually ended up asking a friend, and she confirmed that it was very important that the inside had the 2 floors, and then I just had to do some compromises and make something up for the outside so that it would still look, kind of nice. So one of the things that you've been seeing me do is place these debug fences. You probably know these from Cottage Living, but the debug fence from Cottage Living is actually more of a grey tone. So this one specifically is from For Rent. But I am happy that I found this, because in the film we see that the tower has these cross wooden beam detail, so I wanted to mimic that, and this was really the best way. But don't worry, you will multiple times get to see me struggle with these fences, because they only come as like a 2-tile fence, so I really had some trouble getting a 2-tile straight fence to fit around a curved wall. But I do think it turned out well in the end. I did it all the way around, but there was no reason to show you all of the footage because it's really not interesting. But in the end, the tower has these fence pieces that we are more imagining as like supporting beams all the way around. So the weird clip that you are seeing here is because I really wanted some custom columns. The reason for that being that the columns in game snap to the grid, and I really hate that most of the time, because it means that I'm kind of forced to work with the grid, and that just very rarely makes sense for these builds where we're trying to replicate something that we've seen in another format. So I was trying out some different things, but unfortunately it just did not work. And I think I also realized that working with the curved walls, it was probably a lot safer to in general be working with the grid, because otherwise it was probably going to cause even more issues down the line. Now you're currently seeing me working on the roof for this little blue wooden bump out, and one issue that I did not foresee was that when you place a roof up against a curved wall, part of it actually just disappears. Like there's just this visual glitch of the roof not really reaching the wall, and it bothered me so much. So what you saw me try out was to try and see if I could sort of make a custom or like fake roof with awnings. That just very much didn't work. So I decided that since there was going to be a roof, you were probably not going to notice all that much if the wall wasn't curved. So I solved it by just making a straight wall. That was my go-to. I think it looks absolutely fine. I do think that the roof sort of covers up the fact that it is a straight wall, so it works, and it's much more important for me that the roof like properly closes towards the wall. So here we're working on some more roof details, but the roof is actually not done at all. We will be finishing off the roof when we're basically done with the entire build, and that is because I want to add some custom roofs at like a different height to give it an even higher tower. So it might not make that much sense right now. If you've seen me build the Encanto, I also explained a little bit there how I go in and place these custom raised roofs. But otherwise, I'm sure it will make sense when we reach the end. So another lovely glitch that I was struggling with, which I also blame on the curved walls, was that when I went to the upper floor, I had this weird visual glitch where the stairs just disappeared. Now, we will come back to fix it later, but what's causing the visual glitch is actually the roof. I don't know why, but I will fix it eventually. So here I'm playing around with the archway for the bump out, also adding in some curtains. I was going back and forth on whether or not I wanted to add Enchanted by Nature to the build or if I just wanted to go for a base game arch. Now I decided to go with the Enchanted by Nature one because I preferred the curved, and usually when I think about adding another pack, I sometimes go and look through everything else that comes with the pack to kind of see if anything else would match, because I feel like if I'm using more items, I can better justify just adding a lot of packs. And I found that especially some of the plants could probably be pretty helpful for decorating the tower later on, so it made sense, and I do really like this archway. Now, something else that troubled me when translating this from the film to a Sims 4 build was the placement of the fireplace. Maybe you saw me earlier on place the chimney, and then placing the fireplace here doesn't really make sense, but to be honest, even though I looked at so many screenshots, I really couldn't properly figure out the placement. And I think it's primarily because I'm so locked when it comes to placing the staircase, because the staircase is actually supposed to be a lot closer to the window, and that would have given a lot more space to place the fireplace. But since we cannot do that, we kind of have to work around it. Now, as you see me fix the roof and the stair glitch, I would like to talk a little bit more about the placement of the fireplace. Because in the film, there actually seems to be a door where I place the fireplace in-game. And I am pretty sure that that door actually leads to Mother Gothel's bedroom. So if you're wondering why I didn't add it, is because from the outside, I felt like it would just look way too weird. But I believe that Mother Gothel actually has a bedroom underneath Rapunzel's bedroom, but I instead designed it so that she just sleeps in the blue like bump out. I will playtest if you can have a double bed, and if not, I will just add a single bed, but that was kind of my way to solve it, because otherwise it was just getting like way out of proportions. Now for this video, you will in general be seeing a lot of footage of me just trying to figure out how to work around this round tower. I often cut out these parts because they can become very tedious, but I found that if anyone was interested in seeing how I actually build, this was just a good video to show it, because there was so many things that I had to work around. And you're still only seeing a small part of it. So much of it had to be cut because it was literally just me spending like half an hour on solving one issue. One of the issues that had to be solved was that the kitchen is placed underneath the staircase, and there is this archway that kind of leads into the kitchen. But I had no way of mimicking that because I couldn't find a proper archway that I could just sort of alt place. So instead what I found was in the debug catalog, these pieces are from Jungle Adventure, and it was really the best building blocks that I could find. So raising them, using the tool mod a little bit, I created something that could kind of look like an archway, and I am completely okay with this. I really just wanted the kitchen to feel a bit more tucked in. And the kitchen, of course, is another issue in itself because it's up against a curved wall, and kitchens are not curved whatsoever. So the way I tried to work around that was to alt place all of the counters and kind of angle them so that they match the wall, and then size up and place this base game shelf so that it would cover up all of the small holes in between. It's by no means perfect, but I do think it turned out quite alright, and I do think that it's the best we can do working with the space that we have. From the kitchen, we are finally moving into some more general furniture. We have a large table next to the kitchen. We see this in multiple shots. We also do see a dining table, and we see the red chair that Mother Gothel sits in when she brushes Rapunzel's hair. From here, we're moving on to what I like to call the window side. Next to Rapunzel's window, Mother Gothel has a few hooks where she's always hanging up her cloak. There's also a large mirror that they both look in multiple times, and this is also where we have the closet where Rapunzel later captures Eugene. So the closet in the film is actually blue, and I did look at some closets from high school years, and I did quite like the color, but they just felt way too modern for the space. So instead I chose to go for the one from Horse Ranch, just because I found that it matched the rest of the furniture a lot better, and it also had a size where it was kind of believable that you could actually fit a full human being inside. Now you just saw me delete a few of the jungle adventure pieces that I had placed, and it was because I found that if you actually wanted to play with this, it became too much of a visual nuisance really. And even with those few pieces removed, I still felt like the kitchen seemed like tucked away underneath the stairs, so it still had the effect that I wanted, and it was just a lot nicer to actually look at. So getting all of the decorations out, we are now ready for one of my favorite things, which is just going around and cluttering up the space. So for the kitchen, I purposely tried to place clutter on those like spaces in between the counters to kind of make it all seem a little bit more seamless. And both for the kitchen and also later for the table next to the kitchen, I do use what I like to call the little lamp trick of just taking a base game lamp, placing it where I want the item, removing the table, then placing an item first on the table to get the right height, and then alt placing it at the lamp so that I know where I'm placing things, and then later I can just put the table back. It can seem like a lot of work, and I don't know if it was like the best explanation. I do find it to be kind of a simple thing to do, and I just very much like being able to like custom place all of this clutter. So before we even finish cluttering up the entire space, we will be shortly moving on to Rapunzel's window, because there are these shutters from Horse Ranch and I really wanted to add them. Now this might get a little bit technical, especially for someone who's not used to using the tool mod, but basically the majority of items can be rotated with the tool mod, and most of them rotate around the center, but either way all of them will have like a pivot that they rotate around, and I of course assumed that these shutters would be rotating around the hinges, but it turns out that they don't. They actually rotate towards a pivot that is like slightly next to the hinges. Anyway, what that means is that when rotating them, they were all of a sudden just like in the middle of the air. Now, someone who's better using the tool mod might be able to fix that. I'm very bad at like moving things with the tool mod, and when I tried to move the shutters, they went back to their like regular angle. So the way that I fixed it was to just place another little like debug item so that the shutter is attached to the debug item that is attached to the wall. At least that's what it looks like. So we're now moving downstairs to the part that is surrounded by all of the corbels. Originally I wasn't planning to use this, but eventually I realized that I didn't have any space for a toilet because we do not see any bathroom in the tower. And considering we see her kitchen sink, which is a full-on pump, I assume that they don't actually have running water, so they probably don't really have a fully functional bathroom. But for The Sims 4, we of course need that, so I was very happy that by coincidence I have this space underneath the tower. So this space becomes the bathroom. It also becomes the entrance for the tower. Yes, that is a little bit awkward. I was thinking about using portals, but that was just like too big. That didn't really work either. I actually did try it out, but I didn't like how it looked. So we do just have a very long staircase on the side of the tower. Now the bathroom is of course fully improvised, so instead of talking about that, I would actually rather talk about the floor because I didn't really get to touch upon it when I first made it. So the floor is made up of tiles from Jungle Adventure, which I actually really love because the nuances in the tiles change just a slight bit. And then in the film I noticed that some of the tiles had been painted, and she specifically painted them like blue and purple. So when I found that the Jungle Adventure tile had a blue swatch, I knew that I had to work around it. In the film, it's probably pretty much at random, like she's just painted some of the tiles, but I decided to go in with a pattern because with the rounded walls as well, you can't just place floor however you like. So that's why I made that like square or like diamond in the middle, and I do think that it kind of works. But like she's painted on the floor, she's also painted on the walls, and I honestly didn't really know what to do about that whole situation. So you'll see me try out the wallpaper from Enchanted by Nature, and I did use it in her own bedroom because it was a smaller room, but I didn't like it for the large tower. And I think it's because in the film it's very clear that she has just painted directly on the wall, so we can still see a lot of the wall, whereas if I used the wallpaper, it would cover up everything. So I decided, almost as like a tribute to her paintings, to add these small details from life and death. They come in some different swatches and have this like flower pattern, but even so, I couldn't add it to like all of the walls because curved walls, yeah. So it could only be added properly to like the straight parts, otherwise it just became weird and glitchy. So it's a bit of a shame that we can't really have any more like painting on the wall, but that is just something that we have to accept and live with. We have moved on to the outside. And if you think that we're going to just be quickly done, think again, because this came with basically just as many issues. I think I mentioned in the beginning how I wanted to add some extra roof to add some height to the roof. And so that is what we are working with here. To do this, I unfortunately had to lower the tower, so it's not quite as tall as I like, because there was just a max for how tall the foundation could be. Again, if you're not a builder, this might not make that much sense, but basically I had to lower the foundation to have a taller roof. Also because in the film, Rapunzel's bedroom seems to be a bit higher up than the rest of the tower. So I mimicked that by placing half walls and then placing a roof higher up. This is what I call like custom placing roofs. And so yeah, unfortunately that meant that I had to lower the foundation. So I would have liked the tower to be a bit taller, just because we do have those issues with the proportions. Like from the outside, it kind of feels like it should only be one floor, but it's technically 2 floors. So I feel like the actual living part of the tower is just like a bit too tall. I would have very much liked it to be a bit more squished. But a way to sort of visually take your attention away from that could be that we overall made the tower a lot taller, because the taller the tower is overall, the smaller that top part is going to look. But that wasn't really possible, so it does bother me a little bit, because I feel like the actual living part of the tower, like these top 2 floors, are kind of too big for the tower, but I also feel like this was really the best that we could do. Now, we have already moved on because there's simply just so much to comment on with this build, but I did use some plants from Enchanted by Nature on the upper part of the tower. In the film there is some greenery as well, but I definitely added some more, trying to cover up some of the wall, because it just felt like we had too much walls. Like there are only windows on the lower part, so where the kitchen is, and that kind of made the wall just seem way too tall. So I found that adding a little bit of flowers and greenery could cover it up a little bit. Now in the film we also see that there is a river next to the tower, sort of going through the valley, so I wanted to add that in as well. I am honestly not the strongest at using the terrain tool. I often actually forget that it's a thing. So I tried my best to make not really a river. We can't really have it flowing through. I am limited to the size of the lot, but having some water around the tower that looked somewhat natural. From here we will be adding a lot of plants, doing the landscaping to really try and blend this tower in with its surroundings. And if you're wondering where I'm building, I'm actually building in Windenburg on the lot called the Bluffs. This is a generic lot. It's where a lot of people will try to like invite your sim over for like a DJ party. This might seem like a bit of a random place for Rapunzel's tower, but what I really liked about this lot is that it is not in connection with any other lot, and the entrance is actually through like bushes, through a grotto, and I would say that that does match Rapunzel's tower very well. Now, because this is a generic lot set by the game, you cannot actually use it as a residential if you choose to place it here. So if you want to like play with Rapunzel or make any gameplay with the tower, you will need to place it at another 30 by 30 lot. And I did look at some other lots, but I just have to admit that since I myself don't really play with it, I just found that this was the best and coolest placement for Rapunzel's tower. And I don't know, I kind of like the idea that other sims will be asking your sim to come to a DJ party and then Rapunzel's tower is just in the background, but I mean, if that's not your thing, you can just place it somewhere else. Now here towards the end, I just once again want to say thank you so much to, I would like to just call you Ness. I hope that that is alright. I don't think any of us could have foreseen what a challenge this would be, and I am so sorry for primarily complaining throughout this video. video. I very much appreciate your requests. I hope you are happy with the result. I hope that anyone watching really liked this video. I'm happy receiving your requests. I'm always happy to take on a challenge. And even though I would have liked it to be a little bit closer to what we see in the film, I am happy with the result. So with that, I wish you a lovely day. I hope to see you next time, and bye!